Good afternoon. Today's press conference is hosted by Better Choices for Pennsylvania Coalition. I'm Ron Cowell. I'm with the Education Policy and Leadership Center, and I've been asked to introduce our other guests. In setting the stage for the remarks that we're going to hear, let me point out that this is a very important time in Harrisburg and across the state as the legislature and the governor make important decisions pertaining to the budget for 2013-2014. If the budget that was proposed by the governor or the closely related budget that has begun to move through the House of Representatives is approved in their current form, school districts across Pennsylvania will start the 2013 school year this September with some $700 million less than they had available for student programs and services 3 years ago in September of 2010. And higher education in this Commonwealth will have $200 million less available to support higher education programs in the public sector than was the case 3 years ago. And a host of other services that are dependent on state support will have been diminished and maintained in a diminished funding level. 3 years ago, we had a nearly $900 million cut for basic education. During the last 3 years, if we take this year's budget, this forthcoming budget, as it's been proposed, less than $150 million of that nearly $900 million cut for K-12 will have been restored. This has had and continues to have a dramatic impact, negative impact, on programs and opportunities for K-12 students throughout the Commonwealth. A lot of this has been explained with the lament that we don't have the money here in Harrisburg. We heard that 3 years ago. We hear that this year. We don't have the money. Well, that's not entirely true. As state policymakers made decisions to cut nearly $900 million from basic education and nearly $200 million from higher education 3 years ago, at that same time they were making decisions to cut certain taxes for some corporations in Pennsylvania by hundreds of millions of dollars. And that same kind of conversation is going on in the context of the 2013-2014 budget discussion. There are proposals to further reduce the resources available to state government to support basic education, early education, higher education, the services of local government, and other human services. So this is not an inevitable cut or a matter of inevitably not being able to provide support for these services. Policymakers in this building are making important decisions today and in the coming weeks that will ultimately impact on kids, students, healthcare recipients, and those who depend on local government services all over this Commonwealth. They have decisions to make here in this Capitol. They can make things better, or in fact, they can make them worse than they have been during the past 3 years. I'm very pleased to introduce a series of representatives of local government who will speak to some of these particular issues. First, let me introduce Stephen Drackler, who's the co-chair of the Better Choices for Pennsylvania Coalition. He's also the executive director of United Methodist Advocacy in Pennsylvania. Steve?
Thank you, Ron. As he said, I'm Stephen Drackler, executive director of United Methodist Advocacy in Pennsylvania and one of the co-chairs of the Better Choices Coalition. The coalition is a diverse group of more than 60 organizations from every corner of Pennsylvania. We are individuals and people who are committed to improving the quality of life of every Pennsylvanian, especially our most vulnerable citizens. And let me get this one question we always get asked out of the way very earlier. We are not here today to advocate for increasing taxes in Pennsylvania. We understand the position that lawmakers and the governor are in this year. We know that our economy isn't rebounding the way everyone had hoped it would. And the plain fact of it is there just is not the political will on either side of the aisle to raise taxes. But we believe there is another option available to find greatly needed funds for Pennsylvania's critical investments in education and to support vulnerable children, seniors, and others with special needs. We believe this approach, and it's been floating around the Capitol for a few weeks, should easily get bipartisan support. We call upon the governor and the leadership of the Senate and the House to delay the scheduled cut in the capital stock and franchise tax. By delaying that cut, it would free up to $360 million and would allow lawmakers to at least to begin restoring some of the cuts made in previous years to schools, health care, and human services across Pennsylvania. The General Assembly has been reducing this tax incrementally since 1999, but it has suspended the rate cuts 5 times over these 15 years due to difficult budget and economic circumstances. Well, I think by anyone's definition, we're in one of those times of difficult economic circumstances today, and it makes sense to take that step. Postponing the cut will be a modest price for the business community to pay for an educated workforce, recovering and thriving communities, and to serve our most vulnerable people. The tax is already at a historically low rate, and it's been cut by 85%. Another important fact is that 70% of businesses, many of the small businesses that we say are the backbone of our economy, already are not paying that tax. So delaying this year's reduction is a reasonable step, it's fair, and it's politically palatable. But most importantly, it's the right thing to do for our children and for Pennsylvania's most vulnerable citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Our next speaker is former member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives from Allegheny County. She's currently the Allegheny County Controller, Chelsea Wagner. Chelsea.
Thanks, Ron. The main point here today is that Pennsylvanians deserve a budget that invests in Pennsylvania, one that strengthens our social safety net and adequately funds education and doesn't give further tax breaks to corporations at the expense of working families. As Ron said, my name's Chelsea Wagner. I'm the County Controller in Allegheny County and spent 5 years previously in these halls as a state representative. But I also look at what's going on with this budget proposal in my capacity as a homeowner, as a resident of Allegheny County, and as a mother of 2 young children who will soon be in our public education system. The current $28.4 billion budget proposed by Governor Corbett maintains last year's 10% cut to county human services and offered only a modest increase to public education. So while this budget is not as draconian as the prior ones introduced by the governor, it does little to address the budget pressures faced by today's school districts and counties like Allegheny County. Where is the vision? Where's the vision to make this state and our residents better off? This budget casts local governments adrift, saying, you decide how to make ends meet with declining state support. Municipalities like mine in Allegheny County are placed in a fiscal straitjacket because many of the demands of providing mandated services and a limited ability to generate revenue. Our citizens are already struggling, making it difficult for local governments to raise taxes any further. And the House Republican plan is even worse, as it cuts $230 million in spending from the proposed budget from the governor, including $32 million from the Department of Public Welfare. This budget doesn't go far enough to invest in Pennsylvania's crumbling infrastructure and transportation network. In Allegheny County alone, we have 300 bridges that engineers have determined to be deficient. But with all of the looming problems in our state, what is especially troubling is that this proposed budget includes plans for significant corporate tax cuts, including the elimination of the capital stock and franchise tax and a proposal to reduce corporate net income tax by 30% over 10 years. In recent months, state revenue has come in well below estimate. Given the revenue shortfall, the state has two options. One, more cuts to local schools, healthcare services, and infrastructure, or two, delayed the planned tax breaks. When I was in the legislature, we suspended a planned CFST phase-out because of flagging revenue figures. Freezing this tax at 2012 levels would raise more than $350 million for the fiscal year 2013-14. And we could use this money to prevent further cuts and to invest in Pennsylvania. Budgets are about priorities. It's time for Harrisburg to put its priorities into what counts: schools, roads, and safe and healthy communities. I join here to ask the legislature to look at the budget options that allow us to reinvest in Pennsylvania's educational system, provide money to improve infrastructure, and strengthen the social safety net for those who are at need in our state. The 1.2 million citizens of Allegheny County are counting on you. I am counting on you to do the right thing for our pressing needs and for the promise of our future. Thank you.
Thanks, Chelsea. Our next speaker is another former representative from the Philadelphia area, Alan Butkovitz.
Good afternoon. I'm Alan Butkovitz, and I'm currently the city controller in Philadelphia. And I'd like to second everything that Chelsea said. At a time when we are in a difficult race internationally for first-rate education system, what we're seeing proposed here is a dismantling of big parts of the education system in Pennsylvania and an abandonment of this next generation. I can't really talk much about what's happening across the state, but I'll talk about our little corner of the world in Philadelphia. The city's general fund this year faces major challenges. Due to the transition to a new property tax system, we believe is rife with inaccuracies. And there are potential obligations to union members which have not been adequately recognized in the budget. The school district remains under state control and continues to hemorrhage cash. It expects a $300 million shortfall next year, and without additional state aid will cut 3,000 teachers. In 2014, for the first time, payments to charter schools will exceed the payments to Philadelphia's teachers. The School Reform Commission expects over $100 million in concessions from already underpaid and overworked teachers. It also expects Philadelphia taxpayers to once again incur tax increases, which they have incurred for the past 4 years, to come up with an additional $60 million for the schools. At the same time, the Corbett administration proposes to cut funds to Philadelphia for a third straight year. In addition to schools, these funds support health centers, mental health services, probation programs, and child protective services. In 2013, the Commonwealth will provide $235 million in state support to the city. In 2014, the Commonwealth is budgeting $210 million, a total cut of $25 million. The cuts could have devastating impacts on Philadelphia's most vulnerable people. Mayor Nutter's proposed 2014 budget lists cuts in state aid as follows: $1 million from the Office of Housing, $25 million in the Human Services budget. And that comes on the heels of widespread scandals about excessive caseloads in DHS and children dying because caseworkers simply do not have the opportunity to keep track of more than 300 children at one time. As was mentioned by Steve Drackler, there are alternatives. Now, I guess I'm a little off script because I would also suggest the tax on natural gas. It's outrageous in Pennsylvania. is the only natural gas state that doesn't charge an excise tax. A fair tax could bring in $200 million a year. Gas production should not be outsourced. And secondly, I second what Steve and the coalition have said about stop cutting the capital stock and franchise tax this year. 70% of businesses in Pennsylvania pay no corporate net income tax because they use the Delaware loophole to shelter profits. The cost of the capital stock cuts in 2014 is an estimated $365 million. In a weak recovery in a state in which job growth is 49th in the nation, we cannot afford to continue dole out corporate tax breaks while working and middle-class Philadelphians suffer and we disinvest in our future. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. No problem being off script. There's a message here, but not a script. So we welcome whatever folks have to say. Our next speaker is W. Ronald Williams, member of the Pottstown School Board.
Good afternoon. I am a Republican school board director from Pottstown, Pennsylvania. I'm here because this is a coalition of nonpartisans, and that's important to me. I'm not here to speak about being a Republican or any of the Republican issues. The problems we face in the school districts level of government do not have the convenience of being partisan, and partisan politics does not belong in our local education. We are responsible to our communities, we are responsible to the children we serve, and to provide the best quality education that our taxable property citizens can afford. The efforts of our government over the past few years have been focused on our programs beneficial to the economic recovery and growth of the Commonwealth. At the same time, the economic crises that we have been experiencing has seriously impacted all of us in many ways. Public education has had to contend with the aggregate effects of these events. Funding of important programs has not been adequate, and our school districts have been compelled to make difficult adjustments as a result. In the Pottstown School District, we have eliminated all of our teachers' aides programs except for those that we are mandated to retain. Our teachers have been reduced to a bare bones community. We have two managers in our school district, our superintendent and our business manager. Our staff is cut to the bare bones. Even our security and reception area in our administration building is assigned on a rotation basis to our administrative personnel, and it becomes a little difficult to deal with issues that might arise because one person's at a window, another one isn't. And while we would like to continue doing so, we may likely eliminate our athletic programs in the evenings because we can't afford the lights. I mean, these are just some of the issues that we need to deal with. I probably should have put these on before I started reading. There it is. Pottstown's a borough of approximately 25,000 individuals. We began to lose our downtown retail business in the mid to late 70s. Our industry has disappeared for the most part, either through attrition or relocation. We are one of the highest taxed communities in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Last year we were at 10th spot, or between 10th and 7th. This year we're at 13th, so we're out of the top 10, but it's still difficult. Our poverty and low income population is significant, and many of our homeowners live on a fixed income. My student population in my school district is at poverty or low income percentage of about 70%, and that's significant. We are one of the highest tax communities in the Commonwealth, as I said. The effect is that this has on all the other elements of a healthy community can be seen in our real estate, in our business, in our public services. So when we are in a position to fund the programs that we have to fund, and maintain the programs that should be maintained, the population I described here is placed in the burdensome position of seeing an increase in their taxes, which, as I pointed out, is one of the highest in Pennsylvania already. Our children are our most valuable resources, and they are our future. And the investments that we make in them today will surely become evident when the time comes for them to take their place in our future. I am concerned about the impact that the legislation we are addressing here will have on our schools. While there's certainly a need to help our economy through the efforts of our representatives, both Republican and Democrat, the concern I have here is at what cost? At what cost to rush these actions? There is a way to do this right, but right now is not the time. I don't know how much of an impact the elimination of capital stock and franchise tax will have on education, but I do know that with the loss of dollars to our state budget, combined with the existing cuts projected cost obligations in education, it will certainly create an adverse situation either directly or indirectly. There are a great number of issues that need to be addressed in order to get our public education programs where we as a Commonwealth want them to be, and I don't believe that they will be achieved as quickly as we would like them to be, but somehow we need to find a solution to not harm education while we search for those solutions. So I'm asking our representatives, for our children, for our educators, for our taxpayers of our struggling communities throughout the Commonwealth that are doing their best to survive in these difficult times, please do nothing. Delay passing CSFT and the proposed reduction in corporate net income tax.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Roberta Marcus. Roberta is the co-chair of the Keystone State Education, Education Coalition. She's the vice president of the Parkland School District and as past president of the Pennsylvania School Boards Association. Roberta.
Thank you, Ron. Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. I am Roberta Marcus, co-chair of the Keystone State Education Coalition and vice president, master school board director of the Parkland School District in the Lehigh Valley. The 2012-2013 Parkland School District theme is fostering resiliency, transforming education, shaping the future. My school district, in addition to all Pennsylvania school districts, is taking actions to fulfill each part of that theme. And we are doing all of that and more with much less state funding. Among our local challenges when developing and approving our school district budgets is the continual uncertainty of state dollars. 2 years ago, state legislators rolled back their funding for public education to 2008-2009 levels. The Parkland School District has now seen approximately a $652,000 decrease in their basic education funding. For the past 3 years, we have reduced personnel, programs, and expenditures to balance our budget while trying to stay committed to maintaining a comprehensive, high-quality education for all our children. This commitment is increasingly in danger. The direct impact of these funding changes to the essential elements of providing an education have resulted in increased class sizes, a reduction in academic and athletic offerings, and challenges to the safety and security of our facilities and grounds. They include 4 fewer administrators, 39 fewer teaching positions, 20 fewer paraprofessionals, and 28 fewer support staff. In addition, we have more than 60 fewer high school class sections, fewer advanced placement opportunities, fewer non-core offerings in art and physical education. There also continues to be a reduction in athletic offerings such as intramurals, fewer coaches, and equipment purchases. There are long-term outcomes when we do not support public education, especially a decrease in the standard of living and an increase in the cost to our society. At the local level, our team works daily to prepare for the future and to limit any further harmful impact on our educational programs and opportunities. To continually improve student achievement and maximize the potential of every child should be our Commonwealth's focus when determining budgetary needs. School districts and taxpayers need to know that they have a reliable, sustainable, and equitable resources. We urge the legislature to delay planned tax cuts and use the savings to restore funding to public education. When Pennsylvania lawmakers do not raise the necessary revenue to meet the core priorities of the Commonwealth, such as the constitutional right of a public education, the burden falls heavier on the local school district taxpayer. It is critical during these challenging times that our legislature better serve its constituency. Government officials play the key role in making decisions that will support and shape our future. Public education must be equally considered when these decisions are made, and we thank you for your support.
Thank you, Roberta. Next speaker is Torres Figueroa of the Reading School District, member of the Reading School Board.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes. I'd like to thank Better Choices of Pennsylvania Coalition for making this opportunity available this afternoon, especially to my fellow leaders and public education advocates. I am representing one of the most impoverished school districts in the state. As of the 2010 census, Reading, Pennsylvania received the label and the title of the poorest city in the nation based on its size and its demographics, and for a third-class city. So I do not look at that as an impediment, if not as an opportunity to improve. My friends, the state of public education in Pennsylvania and throughout the nation is faced with surmounting challenges. As a school board director for the Reading School District, my colleagues and I experienced firsthand those challenges which have directly impacted our students' right to fair and equitable education. An education necessary for them to have a chance at the best quality of life, a life that's possible if in fact they have that education. Without it, we have guaranteed their life of suffering and poverty, and the cycle continues. We must advocate and lobby tirelessly to our state leaders and our Governor Corbett to reinstate the funds back into public education. Quality and equitable education is a key economic factor in success for Pennsylvania and its children. In my 4 years on the board, the Reading School District has faced massive deficits, and in order to balance the budget, significant cuts have been made. Our deficits are a result of many factors, but by far the largest one is our growing student population. I'll give you a little fact here. The Reading School District, before actually dividing our high schools, had the largest high school in the state of Pennsylvania. At one point, we had 5,000 kids, 5,000 plus, in a building, an aging building that was only fit for 3,000. We made the decision before my coming onto the board that we were going to build an additional school in order to be able to place the children in 2 separate schools. Our demographics are 85% Latino student body. That's the largest in the state. So we have issues that we're addressing, but by far our numbers are, we had 20% of our population in our city is children 18 years or younger, and that's significant. That's a population that we're not serving at our best. However, our ability to serve them is hindered when the basic education subsidies are reduced, partnered with a local dwindling tax base. We cannot and will not allow this to happen. According to the Center for Public Education, an initiative for the National School Board Association, there are several factors that will plague public education in the future, in the next decade, if not addressed. And the top 4 are closing the achievement gap, educating a diverse population in a global society, providing highly qualified teachers, and the last but not least, funding equal and adequate educational opportunity. Our funding formula is antiquated. What our children receive in comparison to our sister and brother schools in suburban and rural school districts is atrocious. All of these require fair and equal funding. I want to ask our lawmakers to delay making the business tax cuts that they have planned this year that would free up hundreds of millions of dollars. Our schools across the state need that money to give our students the kind of education that they deserve. We cannot allow any child in Pennsylvania to be disenfranchised. Their future, our future, is at stake. Ahora en español. Mi nombre es Isamac Torres Figueroa. Yo represento la Junta Escolar de Reading y estoy aquí luchando con mis compadres aquí sobre la importancia ahora mismo con el presupuesto sobre la educación pública. Aquí nuestro Estado están representando un presupuesto que va a reducir los fondos para nuestros niños. Nosotros no podemos. Esto es lo que están aquí los líderes y los que están abocando por educación pública, están aquí tratando de decir a nuestros líderes, nuestros elegidos, a decir que tal dan ese presupuesto. Muchísimas gracias y que pasen buenas tardes.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jennifer Demare, who is the Vice President of the Lancaster School Board.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Demare, and as said, I am the Vice President of the School District of Lancaster. Each year, our district takes numerous steps to approve a balanced budget. And while I commend our administration and the board's vision to keep programmatic and staff reductions as far away from the classroom as we can, after years of modifying our programs, it has become nearly impossible for our students, staff, and our constituents, the taxpayers, to not feel the burden. Several of those steps taken in recent years include the reduction of our library media program and outreach workers, the elimination of our elementary Spanish program, reduction of budgets across departments and numerous budget freezes, increase of class size from 1 to 25 to 1 to 30. We've also been working on aligning our grant opportunities to the core values, outsourcing several positions. We've had pay freezes by our teachers, our support staff, and our non-union staff. We also transferred between entities for our special education services. And the list goes on and on. The major factors that have contributed to our budgetary woes include salaries, benefits, which is specifically PSERS and healthcare, utilities, transportation, charter school tuition, and special education. Next year alone, these factors will cost the district an additional $10 million. To further complicate matters, the district is anticipating an additional $700,000 reduction as a result of the proposed federal sequestration. It will impact funds related to class size reduction, supplemental supports to our most economically disadvantaged schools, such as reading support teachers, funding for our immigrant and refugee population, and our after-school programs. Like many other districts, the School District of Lancaster faces flat and declining revenues with increased expenditures. Overall, we're anticipating a $7.15 million deficit going into the school year. As a board, we are forced to keep our tax increase within the Act 1 index of 2.5%, authorize non-mandated program reductions, and pull from our fund balance. These options are necessary to ensure we can still provide a high-quality education for our students. In closing, I urge our legislators to fight for fair and equitable funding for all public school districts. Specifically, I would ask the lawmakers to delay the planned tax cuts this year and to not enact new tax cuts. We simply cannot afford to give them the needs of the school districts across the state. Our students deserve quality futures in schooling, and our whole future depends upon it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Dr. Robert Erzillo, Superintendent of the Blue Mountain School District.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me here today. I want to tell you a little something about my school district before I go on. Blue Mountain is in Schuylkill County. We're approximately 2,900 students. We encompass 126 square miles. We have four buildings, and we do well. We achieve. Every year, we meet standards set by No Child Left Behind. Every year, we have the highest PSSA scores in the region. However, what's happening now may very well threaten our chances of further success. Blue Mountain, like most, if not all school districts in Pennsylvania, is being adversely affected and victimized by economic events that are beyond our control. The main cause of this appears to be the pension crisis. Without going into great detail, the public school employees' retirement system was plagued by the economic downturn of 2008 and has yet to fully recover. Unfortunately for school districts in the Commonwealth, this downturn has resulted in skyrocketing costs for local school districts. In Blue Mountain, we have, to be specific, increased pension cost of $827,227 for next year. That's on a $38 million budget. An additional nearly $800,000 for the 2014-2015 school year. Couple this expense with rising health insurance costs, regular contractual obligations, Act 1 tax limits, limited state expenditures, and you will find an unsustainable economic situation. To give you an example, we have set a 4-year budget projection and estimate a near $6 million deficit by 2016-2017. We cannot tax our way out of this situation. Blue Mountain's financial problems have been compounded by limited appropriations from the state. Over the past 3 years, nearly $1 billion in state funding cuts have occurred. Additionally, special education funding from the state has been flat despite rising expenditures, and it's been flat for the last 5 years. Another economic burden that schools face is the cost of charter schools, both brick and mortar and cyber. To give you another example, we'll expend approximately $600,000 this current school year, 2012-2013, for cyber charter schools, despite the fact that we run our own cyber charter school. How has the Blue Mountain School District responded to this economic crisis? We have taken a number of steps to preserve programs and to protect people. For example, we had an across-the-board wage freeze in 2011-2012. We also changed our health insurance to a self-funded insurance mechanism, which saved another $775,000. However, our primary method of coping with this crisis has been through reductions in staff through attrition. Over the past 3 years, we have reduced our faculty and administration by 20 positions, and that's of a school district of 2,900 kids. What does this mean? We have fewer electives at the high school. We have larger class sizes in the middle school, and we have fewer classes per year in both library and physical education at the elementary level. Through a deft and adroit transfer of personnel, we have yet to eliminate any programs, but yet is the operative word. We no longer have any promise of saving money through attrition. Raising class size in elementary schools is no longer an option. Any such increases will be a sign of educational malpractice, and we will pay in the future through increases in special education costs. Another problem is the reduction of Title I funds, and I know this is a federal program, but this upcoming year we will see a decline of $85,000. The district has chosen to make up this deficit. If Title I is cut anymore, we may not have such an option. What does the future hold without an infusion of funds? Where does all this end? It's obvious that we have to engage in program reductions. I foresee fewer courses in art, fewer courses in music, fewer courses in physical education. I see an even greater reduction in elective courses at the secondary level. I see that endangering the admission of our students into college. Friday night we had graduation of a graduating class of 232 students. We had an aggregate $2.1 million in scholarships because we were able to offer these programs. If we don't get the money, that's going to be jeopardized. In short, I see a contraction of educational opportunities for the students at Blue Mountain School District. We're teetering on the precipice of bankruptcy, and without greater state appropriations, we'll see an economic apocalypse. I urge the legislature to consider delaying spending or suspending tax cuts this year so that the state is able to assist school districts in meeting the severe financial challenges. Thank you.
We have 2 remaining speakers. Next is Rocky Honor, President of the Lehighton Area School Board.
Good afternoon. I would like to thank the Better Choice Pennsylvania Coalition for the invitation to speak, and also all the senators, representatives, and staff that serve us here at the state capitol. In our town, many other towns across the state, a lot of families struggle from paycheck to paycheck to make ends meet. That's why in these difficult times, it's hard for us to make the state cuts that they have given us, that we have to pick up the slack. Cost of charter school tuition in our county has increased from $1.4 million to $3 million in 4 years. Police protection is underfunded, and county human services is being cut. School districts in our area are using fund balances to balance their budgets to give taxpayers relief one more year in this uncertain state budget. Yet, as responsible school boards, we dig deeper, keep drug and alcohol curriculum, after-school activities, and underfunded mandates that are essential to the education, safety, and welfare of our students. Local, county, and borough township officials are increasing taxes to offset their cuts, shifting the blame to them instead of us raising the taxes, making them the bad guy now. Also in our town, we have a bridge that is a main artery to many surrounding towns such as Jim Thorpe, Palmerton, Tamaqua, Nesquehoning, Lansford, Summit Hill, to name a few. How can we attract businesses to come to our community when our infrastructure is patched with Band-Aids? The proposed one-time sale of state liquor stores was called the Passport to Education. Now it looks like it's called the Passport to Anything. This brings me to the main focus of today's press conference. The elimination of the capital stock and franchise tax is not the rational way of helping our children, seniors, and overall health of our local economy at this time. This tax has been reduced 85% in 15 years. Yet, if frozen at current rate for the 2013-14 year, it would generate $350 million to fund our schools, county health services. This is a lot of jobs. This tax is a so-called job killer tax. So my question to everyone is, if the capital franchise tax is eliminated, what are the next steps in creating jobs? I am also a small business owner, and I know that it takes more than taxes, a reduced tax, to get companies hiring. It takes multiple strategy to move the economy in a positive direction. I'd like everyone here to leave with this thought in their mind, including our legislators. Pennsylvania has been a leader since 1600s in education. Our seniors have cut the path for us, and our children will be our future. In any decision you make, don't forget either one, and also consider the ones in between. Thank you. It's been an honor and a privilege.
Our last speaker is John Spiegelman. John is a member of the Abington Township Board of Commissioners.
Hi. Thanks so much to the folks at Better Choices for Pennsylvania Coalition for inviting me here. And thanks also to my fellow participants. Your words were really inspirational. My name is John Spiegelman, and I am the Township Commissioner for Ward 11 of Abington Township in Montgomery County. You know, there's nothing quite like the immediacy and intimacy of local government. I don't have to go to Washington, D.C. or to Harrisburg here or even to our county seat in Norristown to do the people's work. When we have our meetings, I go to a building in my ward that's a 7-minute walk from my house downhill. But with that intimacy comes a special kind of accountability. When you raise people's taxes, you hear about it. You hear about it from the senior citizen on a fixed income. You hear about it from the family that's struggling just to stay in their home as it is. You hear about it from everybody. But you don't hear about it on the comment board of some website or at a town hall meeting. You hear about it at the grocery store. You hear about it at the PTA meeting or in church. Every day, face to face. Abington Township is proud to have been repeatedly recognized as one of the Commonwealth's and the country's best places to live. But in order for us to thrive and even to survive, we can't tax people out of their homes and out of town. We can't cut municipal services until they're non-existent. We can't keep dipping into fund balance year after year. We have to grow, diversify, and modernize our business base. That not only increases revenue, but brings the jobs that people need and the services that they passionately crave. But in our first ring suburb, many of our major thoroughfares are state roads that are in one way or another crumbling. And it's not within our township's purview or means to fix them. The Commonwealth has the power to repair and upgrade the storm sewer inlets and sidewalks along State Road 611. That's Old York Road, our main commercial corridor. That will finally allow us to fill far too many empty spaces by attracting small businesses, mid-sized companies, and startups, the real job creators. And also the restaurants and other attractions that our residents ask for all the time. But only Pennsylvania can make those investments. The Commonwealth also has the power to resurface State Road 2017, Susquehanna Road, which is so potholed, patched, and pockmarked from both long-term disrepair and massive utility work that it resembles the surface of the moon, and where the bumps of passing cars and trucks are shaking and cracking the exterior of people's houses along the street. PennDOT dropped the repaving of Susquehanna Road from this year's budget. Our state rep, Madeline Dean, and her staff fought hard to get it restored. So now PennDOT says that they hope to get to it this summer. Folks in my ward desperately hope that they do, but only Pennsylvania can make it happen. The Commonwealth has the power to solve a problem that affects a portion of my ward and the entirety of several others. One of our neighboring municipalities is under a sewer moratorium. And that makes it impossible for them or for us to redevelop some significant commercial areas until their sewer infrastructure is massively upgraded. Our neighbor and we affected municipalities have committed to making this happen, but it will take a lot of money and a very long time. The state could shrink this timeline exponentially by investing in these upgrades right now, thereby opening the door for crucial development that will generate revenue for all and create jobs for lots of people. Our communities are committing to doing this as soon as possible, but only Pennsylvania could help us now. These are only a few examples from just my ward, one of 15 in Abington Township. And we're just one municipality in just one county. Problems and issues like these, which are daunting and seemingly insurmountable at the local level, can be easily remediated by the Commonwealth simply by investing the funds that the current budget leaves on the table in the form of tax cuts to large corporations that don't need them and won't invest them in Pennsylvania. It's easy to dismiss these tax cuts as giveaways, but when you're in local, small-town government, they seem more like throwaways, because what's being thrown away is our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just underscore part of the message that we heard from several of the school district representatives. Roberta Marcus, who represents one of the relatively wealthier school districts in this state, described the very negative effects on services and opportunities for students. The other speakers, who represent relatively poorer districts, and in some cases among the poorest districts in the state, represent those districts that were hardest hit by the nearly $900 million cut in state resources to school districts 3 years ago. I come from Allegheny County. The richest school district in our county had a cut of less than $100 per student per year. Less than $100 per student per year. And the poorest district, had a cut of $1,000 per student per year. And that was the pattern across this state. So today's message is not about who can scream louder. It's about helping lawmakers in this building understand the devastating impact of decisions they've made over the last 3 years, and to make a plea to them that if the problem has been that you don't have the money, don't make the problem even worse by further giving away dollars to some businesses and further reducing the resources of the Commonwealth to fix these awful problems that we've heard described today. Thank you very much to all of our speakers and to everybody who is here.